In the very early hours of May 19, 2016, an Airbus A320 operated by the Egyptian national air carrier Egyptair seemingly disappeared over the Mediterranean Sea, the lives of 66 people vanishing alongside the plane. It's a plane accident which has been shrouded in a veil of mystery for some time, with limited information released to the public in the years since, a trend that has persisted even to this day. However, in recent months, new information began to surface, and we now know why this plane crashed, and where the origin of the disaster started. This is the story of Egyptair Flight 804. But first, some background. Flight 804 was Egyptair's nighttime service from Paris's Charles de Gaulle Airport to Cairo in Egypt. Egyptair is an airline that historically has had a turbulent safety record. The carrier had alleviated this somewhat in the years leading up to Flight 804. The fleet was modernized for one thing, as the airline operates the ever-popular Airbus A320 aircraft for many of its shorter international routes, including the one to Paris. The Airbus A320 is one of the most popular planes currently in the skies. It is equipped with some of the most technologically advanced systems ever seen on an airplane. It's a plane popular among pilots and passengers alike due to its automated flight controls and passenger comfort, dependent on the airline. At just after 11 p.m. on May 18, 2016, this Airbus A320 departed Paris and was expected to arrive in Cairo at just after 3 in the morning. The first 2 hours of the flight went off without issue. As normal, the pilots were in communication with numerous air traffic controllers. It was a routine nighttime flight, and the skies were quiet, especially over southeastern Europe. Up on the flight deck on that quiet night was 36-year-old Captain Mohammed Saeed Ali Shoker and the younger first officer, Mohammed Ahmed Mamdou Assem. Though this was a young flight crew, the flight hours they possessed would seem to indicate that they were proficient pilots. Captain Shoker with over 6,000 total flight hours, whereas the first officer had logged 2,700 hours by the time of the accident. They had been working long hours, and the pilots were evidently tired, supposedly backed up by audible yawns heard on the cockpit voice recorder. A further 5 members of cabin crew worked attending to the 56 passengers in the cabin, plus a further 3 employees of Egyptair. In total, that's 66 people that were on board. Cruising at 37,000 feet, the pilots checked in with Greek air traffic control at just before 1:30 in the morning. Just a quick note to bear in mind, the timestamps going forward are in reference to local time to Athens and Cairo. Heading southeast, Flight 804 passed over the Greek capital of Athens, continuing over the Aegean Sea, passing to the east of islands such as Santorini and Crete, then flying over the tiny Greek island of Kassos, before heading out over the open sea between Europe and Africa. No communication between the pilots and air traffic control took place as the following crisis unfolded. Recovered radar data showed the plane vanishing pretty much halfway over the sea at around 2:30. Without sending a distress signal or any communication, the plane had crashed into the Mediterranean Sea, killing 66 people. The wreckage largely stayed at the bottom of the water for about a month before it was found. The obvious questions about what happened to the plane began to spring up. It is already a rare occurrence for a passenger plane to crash in the modern day, but for one of this nature, with this plane, people wanted answers. Media sensationalizing didn't help matters as speculation about terrorist activity began to spread. 3 months previously, another Egyptair A320 was hijacked on a domestic flight between Alexandria and Cairo, ultimately landing in Cyprus. On October 31, 2015, the previous year, a Russian passenger plane was bombed just minutes after leaving the resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh, killing 224 people. This led to speculations and doubts about the safety of not only the airline of Egyptair, but also aviation travel in Egypt in general. To extend on the latter point, multiple air carriers and tour operators pulled their services from Egypt temporarily following the Metrojet incident. It should be said now that premeditation did not play a role in the crash of Flight 804. This was an accident. A rather baffling one at that. So let's back up and delve into the information we have about those final moments of the flight. And a good place to start would be the recovered flight data of the plane. Though the aircraft disappeared from radar, it hadn't broken up in flight. It continued flying. The final 3 minutes of the flight depicted the plane making a 90-degree turn to the left, followed by a 360-degree turn to the right. When this information was first released by Greek authorities, it was contested by some in Egypt. During the turns, the plane began descending and it continued downward until signal was lost at around 10,000 feet. It spiraled into the sea. But what other information did we have at first? Because that doesn't really tell us much. Well, to get us moving in the right direction in clarifying what was going on as the disaster unfolded, we can look towards the messages that were sent out by the plane's ACARS system. Modern passenger planes are equipped with a piece of equipment known as the Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System. It's called ACARS for short. It's an automated communication system that sends out small pieces of information about a flight and plane back to the ground. These messages can often be useful in the case of maintenance, for example. So when investigators extracted the ACARS information from Egyptair, what they found was compelling. These are those messages sent between 2:26 and 2:29 that morning. Multiple alerts indicating smoke suggest that a fire had broken out on board. The speculation about a fire was confirmed to be true after cross-referencing the data with the recovered flight data recorder, which also recorded smoke in the forward lavatory and the avionics bay beneath the cockpit. This really only led to more questions than answers. Fires don't just start for no reason on a passenger plane. Some even pointed to this revelation to be more concrete evidence of a bomb exploding on board. Still, the questions about the origin of the fire remained in the world of speculation. The investigation on the Egyptian side seemed to reveal little. Communication between Egyptian investigators and the international aviation community was minimal at best. So where did that fire come from? Let's talk about fire. We were all taught in science class that a fire needs 3 components to proliferate: fuel, heat, and oxygen. For now, let's look at oxygen. It had been revealed that an oxygen leak occurred on the first officer's side oxygen mask and supply. A few days before the accident on May 16th, the plane had been in maintenance and the first officer's oxygen mask was replaced. Maintenance works ran a test on the system, and to do that, the system was placed into emergency mode. Airbus stated that in this mode, an oxygen leak may occur. According to an Airbus document, the pilot oxygen supplies come in the form of a high-pressure cylinder located on the lower captain side. Pilots can control the flow of oxygen via a series of valves and switches that can be operated to shut off the supply if needed. Emergency mode, according to Airbus, creates an overpressure. It is used to alleviate the mask of condensation, whilst also preventing the accumulation of smoke, ash, and unwanted smells. A control knob on the oxygen system can create a permanent overpressure of this oxygen. It is believed that an oxygen leak occurred here because the first officer's oxygen system was left in emergency mode by maintenance workers 3 days previously. So was there anything else wrong with the plane? Well, it's perhaps worth noting as a side note, multiple sources indicate the accident plane registered as Sierra Uniform Golf Charlie Charlie on May 18th was running into some technical problems. Beginning in the late evening of May 17th, the plane made a journey to Asmara in Eritrea, returning to Cairo in the early morning of May 18th. This was followed by a round trip to Tunis. Then the journey to Paris took place in the evening of May 18th, leading to the accident in the early hours of the 19th. On 3 of these flights, emergency landings needed to be made shortly after the plane took off. The ACOS system sent out information that warranted the returns, but following an examination of the plane on these occasions, the plane was allowed to fly regardless. The oxygen leak alone would not be enough to start the fire that consumed the plane. This is perhaps where the most baffling element of this disaster comes into play. Among the plane's records, it was indicated that 2 months before the crash, a particular receptacle had been replaced in the cockpit. Upon further evaluation, it was deemed to be an ashtray for cigarettes. Amazingly, Egyptair allowed their pilots to smoke in the cockpit, something that wouldn't be banned at the airline until after this accident. Just to remind you, this occurred in 2016. International investigators in France who began their own investigation in 2018 have now gestured towards the pilots smoking at the time the fire started. We know that an oxygen leak can lead to disaster. When ValueJet Flight 592 crashed in 1996, the investigation concluded that an oxygen leak induced by poor management of cargo and storage of numerous mislabeled oxygen containers began a fire. One or more of these containers activated and started emitting oxygen, and the containers themselves had a tendency to give off a lot of heat. This all culminated in a devastating plane crash that killed 110 people. To learn more, please see our video on this accident. It's now believed that a lit cigarette combined with the oxygen leak led to the deadly fire that brought Egyptair Flight 804 down. The cockpit voice recording picked up numerous noises and hissing at around 2:25, recorded from a microphone inside of the oxygen mask. Over the next minute, the fire would spread to the forward lavatory, where this ACOS message was sent out at 2:26. 1 minute later, we know the fire, or at least smoke, entered the avionics bay beneath the cockpit. From this ACOS message the plane sent out at 2:27. 2 minutes later, other faults were noted with the plane. These included faults in the flight control unit that commands the autopilot and other fly-by-wire functions, and another with flight controls recorded at 2:29. At 2:36, the first transmission of the aircraft's emergency locator transmitter, or ELT for short, was noted. It's a piece of equipment supposed to signal when a plane crashes, so it's easier to find, suggesting the pilots had just mere minutes. The pilots of Egyptair Flight 804 lost control of their plane and crashed into the Mediterranean Sea, killing all 66 people on board. Criticisms have been levied at Egyptian authorities. Egypt undertook the investigation and failed to produce even a preliminary report. Egyptian investigators reportedly also ceased contact with international investigators, which prompted an additional investigation, leading to the findings we know today. Pilots at Egyptair are now banned from smoking on their planes. Some now believe that this decision by Egyptair to ban the questionable habit of its pilots indicates that Egyptian investigators came to a similar conclusion about the fire but remained silent. However, that merely resides in the world of speculation. Currently, Flight 804 has been the last accident to have occurred at Egyptair, and hopefully it stays that way. Hello everyone, thanks for watching. If you found this video to be interesting, be sure to drop a like and be subscribed, as new videos are always in the works. In case you missed it, there was a midweek video that went out on Tuesday as a sort of extra video for this month. This video though is a one I've wanted to make for a long time, so I'm so thrilled that it's now finally out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I was so happy with how this video has turned out that I've actually now added it to a new playlist named Creator Highlights for videos that I personally would like to feature more prominently. I'll not keep this outro too long, so I'll jump straight into the Patreon stuff. A massive thanks to my amazing Patreon supporters for contributing to the channel. I can't thank them enough for their support. Their names are scrolling on the screen right now. So if you see your name here, a massive thanks to you. A shout out this week to My Seahorse Runaway for pledging literally 5 minutes after the previous video was uploaded. Thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Legend. If you yourself want to support the channel further, consider joining the Disaster Breakdown Patreon from just £1 per month, and the link to that will be in the pinned comment below. All patrons get early access to all new content 48 hours before it goes out publicly on YouTube. With all of that said, a massive thanks for watching, and I will see you next weekend. Goodbye!